G'day guys, Chris Story here. Today I'm going to go through, in my opinion at least, the best value picks from the 2021 draft. So this is basically taking where were they drafted versus where did I rate them in the draft. And I'm also taking a little bit into account as well the tier lists, so be mindful of that. So the first player, and I'll go through in order of where they were picked. So firstly, a pick 4, Collingwood Nick Daicos. So for me, number 2 on my draft board, and it was a 1A, 1B scenario where is Horn Francis a little bit better? Is Daicos possibly that number 1 guy? I ended up going with Daicos at number 2, but he's probably that 1B really in the draft. So absolute outstanding value here. And again, because Collingwood get, of course, the 20% discount with the father-son, they've really done an incredible job there. They've got really lucky, I should say. It's not really up to them where a bid comes, but yeah, great value, but it really helped out with the next pick, and I'll go through that in a little bit as well. But yeah, number 7, Hawthorn, Josh Ward. So I had him at number 5 in my power rankings, and really for me, I guess, I had a top 6 tier, so the fact that Ward could be had at 7, I think is really tremendous. So I think Hawthorn have done really well, and they've got pretty much an automatic 15-year midfielder right here. So that's one to certainly be excited for, because he does everything really well, ultimately, through the midfield. And then you've got at number 10, Fremantle, Neil Erasmus. So for me, I had him at number 6 in my draft board, and really from that, I guess, you could almost say it's a third tier, but from that group, I had a clear top 6, and Erasmus was that last in that group. So represents outstanding value here, and here's someone where I would have picked him at Fremantle's pick 8 ultimately, just really rating what he does that highly. So yeah, excellent pick there, and he's one of those where there's that sort of tallish midfielder, great ball winner, strong mark overhead, late birthday, late improver. So I think Fremantle are really going to get someone where, in the long term, I think Erasmus will be a monster. So wait and watch with that one. And then next pick, so at 21, Fremantle. So again, Fremantle, Matthew Johnson. So he was actually number 7 in my power rankings. So live in the moment, what I would have done as Fremantle, I would have gone Erasmus at 8, and then at 10 I would have gone Johnson. But Fremantle have done one better than that. They've actually managed to get who would have been really my top picks at each of those selections with basically their second and third picks. So that's absolutely tremendous there. So and with Johnson, of course, we've got that taller mid where great skills, moves incredibly well. Just a really exciting player, and through the under-19 champs, I thought he was the best there. So, yeah, really excellent value choice there. Really impressive pick. So, and of course, he would have been in the mix at Fremantle's pick 10 as well. So he could possibly have been their second on their draft board at that point. So, yeah, again, excellent value, and there would have been a few clubs where he would have been maybe it's second, maybe it's third on their draft boards. But of course, unless they're that sort of top guy, their preferred player at that particular pick, well, that opportunity can sometimes come about. But number 33, so Mitch Owens, so this was a matched bid, but for me, he was picked 19 on my board, so tremendous value at this point. And the key for St Kilda, of course, was there wasn't a bid inside the top 20, because had that happened, well, there wouldn't have been an opportunity to match bids. So, yeah, and that sort of later blooming, tall midfielder, you can play him inside, outside, could play on a flank if you want him to, so you've got a lot of options with Owens at the end of the day. But again, great value here is that real sort of upside pick ultimately. And I'd say the same of Johnson, who was the previous one. But yeah, 42, Greater Western Sydney, Josh Fahey. So I had him at 28 in my rankings. And again, almost you've done the Giants a favour ultimately by bidding on him this much later than expected. So there was a bit expected really quite a bit earlier in the second round, ultimately. So probably around Richmond's pick was where a bid was expected. But yeah, great outcome, obviously, for the Giants, not really having to use such a high bid at the end of the day. So, yeah, and then Adelaide at pick 44, so Zac Taylor. So, and in the end, as it worked out, there was a lot of value that made it through to the 40s. So, Zac Taylor, this is probably, in terms of in percentage terms, the greatest disparity of all the picks in the draft compared to where I rated them. So we've got a pick 44, he was 12th on my board, so you've got the speed, he's got the skills, he can rack it up, he can win his own ball, so really good midfielder. You can play him inside, outside, you could even probably push him forward if you really wanted to, maybe even cross half back if you had to. So Just a really good footballer ultimately at the end of the day, an absolute bargain here. And look, Adelaide's list makeup is almost a bit weird where you've got so many small midfielders, and Adelaide have added to their small midfielders. They don't have any height through there, so it's sort of an interesting mismatch, I suppose. But yeah, look, ultimately Adelaide really got a lot of value from this draft, even regardless of, I guess, not really considering height too much. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out for them, but I suggest probably in future years they'll be looking for some height, or at least you'd probably hope so, just to have, I guess, a bit more physical size through there, so then they can win it a bit easier. But yeah, moving on. So pick 45, Collingwood, Arlo Draper. So they actually moved up to this pick, but it was sort of, I guess, helped along by the bid on Daicos being quite a bit later as well. It made it easier for Collingwood to move up to this selection. So Arlo Draper, he was number 17 in my power rankings, and he was that last of that top 20. So represents outstanding value, and there's a lot for Collingwood to be excited about at the end of the day, where he's one of those classy midfielders where he's got that sort of evasion moves really well, but he's also got incredible skills. He's got the vision. He's someone where, let's say he's out on the wing, has the ball, he'll look into the corridor, find those targets, hit them. So he's got that sort of skill set. And he's someone where, although he only had a tiny taste of SANFL League play, what was really impressive when I did see him at that level is that even against that level of competition, as still a pretty sort of skinny developing midfielder physically, he really looked like he had more time and space than really anyone else on the field, and just showed that class and composure that was really that tier above. So that's something to be really excited about, because that tells me that his play is really going to adapt very well to AFL standard competitions. So yeah, I'm very excited as a Collingwood fan, of course, to be getting Draper at that point as, for me, a clear best available. So and then Essendon, the next pick. So again, it's that value in the 40s, 44, 45, 46. These guys should have, from my perspective at least, been second rounders at worst. So Alistair Lord, so he was 23 in my power rankings, and for me he's really that most outstanding rebounding defender in the draft in terms of, I guess, his capabilities with ball in hand. So he's got that absolute run and dare, and with the way he takes on the game, it's really as good as anyone in this draft off half-back. But on top of that as well, the bonus is incredible skills. He's just as damaging by foot. So he's really that, I guess in an Essendon context, is basically like getting another Connor McKenna in there. So he's got that development scope in him. So really exciting addition at the end of the day for the Bombers. And look, they have added a couple of additional rebounding defenders this year, but look, ultimately at the end of the day, particularly with the Lord selection, they've got a great deal of value with that pick. So I think that's really tremendous there. And then moving on to the rookie draft. So, and again, Collingwood, Charlie Dean. So he was number 37 in my power rankings, and Collingwood needed that key defender, and they've got a good one in Dean. So he was the rising star of the VFL, winner of the Fothergill Round Mitchell medals. So really stepped up, and I really respect his resilience as well, where he's someone where his draft year was 2019, and going into that year, he was seen as a possible first round pick. So I started out the year thinking, oh yeah, I'd have him somewhere in the, let's call it 18 to 22 range in my power rankings. So I was thinking, oh yeah, going into the season I might be thinking that sort of thing. And he had a couple of good games to start the year, but really fizzled off, went undrafted. It'd be easy to just sort of give up at that point and just think, oh, I'm not going to ever make it. But yeah, respect to Dean. He's someone where, obviously with no VFL the next year, that was obviously tricky as well, because you can't really get in front of the recruiters. And then this year, well, his transition from previously a key forward to this year a key back, and had a tremendous season. So yeah, credit to him for making his way onto an AFL list. So and then the other rookie pick that was highly impressive for me was pick 5, Hawthorn, Ned Long. So I had him at 27 in my power rankings, and this one, along with Taylor, was really that, I guess, greatest disparity in percentage terms between where they were picked and how I value them. So, and this description will get Hawthorn fans excited. So he's a 195 centimetre midfielder forward ultimately. So he can be a genuine midfielder, and he kicked 7 goals from his 3 games. So and he also grew 3 centimetres this year. So start of the year he was measuring in at 192. End of year, in the lead up to the draft, 195. So yeah, very exciting. Maybe we've got a few more centimetres in him, so we could be getting those few steps closer to that genuine 2-metre midfielder. So, yeah, really exciting stuff. And look, had the season gone on, I think there'd be a pretty fair chance that with that sort of rate of development and rate of growth from Long, we would have seen him go, I reckon, national draft, and maybe a bit earlier than people would be thinking. So, yeah, great value there. But yeah, so for some updates on my end, on Twitter, if you don't follow me yet, make sure you do, which is at AFL Draft Expert. During the national draft, I was live tweeting some quick and dirty sort of descriptions about all the players, how they play, and also answering everyone's questions online. So make sure you go through those so you get a quick feel as to, I guess, how all the players play and go about their business. In addition to that, on espn.com.au/AFL, you can find my reviews of both the first round and then also the national draft with grades. So hopefully your team graded well, but look, at the end of the day, the grades were based on, as per in this video, my power rankings. So, and that's not the be-all, end-all. There's a lot more in terms of the variables that come into it, where you can go to a good club, you can go to a bad club that doesn't develop players as well. So there's a lot more that goes into it, but yeah. And in addition to that, on ESPN, we're also going to have the my top picks for the 2022 draft. So a little bit of a, I guess, look ahead as to that. And then also on YouTube in the coming days, I've got another few videos in the pipeline as well. So make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell hit so you're alerted right away for that. So the first one will be how not to live trade. So looking at one live trade in particular that is highly questionable, it's fair to say, and really, I guess, lessons that can be learnt from that, and another live trade that probably in terms of methodology is a bit of a query I would have as well, and a bit of another lesson to learn there. And the other video I have planned as well in the immediate term is 10 draft snubs. So these are players where it's pretty much taking them out of my power rankings and really talking about them and looking at, okay, mid-season draft, maybe it's the pre-season supplemental period. These are some guys that clubs really need to be watching carefully, because ultimately they can all play, at least in my opinion, and they haven't received that opportunity. So I think, again, next year they'll be knocking on the door. And this year won't be the last time I've got players where, although I've rated them early, they'll go undrafted. So last year I had Jackson Callow in my top 20, and guess what? He goes in the mid-season draft because he's someone where ultimately he was playing really good football upon moving to the Sandful and really dominating at league level as that top contested mark guy. Or a few years back, again, in my top 20, I had Jordan Butts. So, and then of course the year later, he gets rookied. So that really took that extra year for him to even still barely get noticed as a good footballer. So, yeah, my record in terms of these players where I've rated them quite highly and they go undrafted, there's been quite a few of them over the years that have later on achieved success. So fingers crossed, at least on my end, I get a few more of them this year. So, but anyway guys, see you in the next video.